everyone, and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I'm your host, Code Marvelous, and today I'm joined by none other than Seamus from the United Kingdom.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back, Seamus. You're a much welcome repeat guest.
Thank you very much for having me.
Today we're going over the much-loved, much-maligned Controlling the Message, and a deck that you've been cooking up.
Well, I should probably say from the outset, my involvement in this deck is minimal at best. I suppose brief acknowledgements to Noah McKee, who built the deck that it's based on. I think that was at Gen Con. And then a couple of guys in the UK who have been sort of bouncing ideas off and copying shamelessly to a degree. Laurie Poulter and Chris Dyer, probably among many others.
Right.
And then made a couple of changes myself to this.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shame in making some edits.
Sure.
And seeing what we can do. So we are on Controlling the Message, which, if you've been living under a rock for the last 2 months, is the 4512 NBN identity that says the first time the runner trashes an installed corp card each turn, you trace 4. And if successful, you give them a tag, and it cannot be avoided. It's delicious. I remember...
They found a way of... sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
They found a way of making an unbelievably good NBN ID without giving it 17 influence.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, it still has 15 influence because it still has Jackson Howard. But I was going to say, that like Christian from Teamwork Cast and Kelfasil, they both don't like my asset spam deck.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, when this was spoiled, I sent them this picture and I'm like, now my asset spam comes with tags. Like... Because that's basically the first thing I thought. I'm like, ooh, now I get tags too.
Yeah, it's absolutely filthy.
It's really good. I really love it. And it's really nice, even though people don't like it and it's hard to play, or people have a hard time playing against it. The thing I like most about Controlling the Message is it plays other NBN cards besides what we see or have seen for the last couple of years. It brings out the opportunity to use NBN's full repertoire of tags, which was supposed to be the core thing of the faction, even though Fast Advance is obviously a part of that as well.
Yeah. I think possibly Sync started to do so before Controlling the Message was released. It plays a lot of the psychographics, closed accounts, and of course the now ubiquitous exchange of information.
Right.
But CTM's really propelled it forward.
Right. Sync enhances the tagging. NBN Controlling the Message gives you the ability to, since they finally did the thing where the ID itself has a tagging element, it justifies playing all those one-of tag punishment cards because the likelihood of you landing a tag is higher when your ID itself puts tags on.
Yeah, and I think hard-hitting news is a huge part of that as well. I mean, I suppose we'll come to a runner card which has a similarly large impact on the meta, but hard-hitting news has been huge, and I don't see anyone playing successful runner decks who aren't making huge allowances for the presence of hard-hitting news in the meta.
Unless you're criminal, in which case you make one allowance.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the reason to play criminal at the moment is because you can relatively reliably make the money required to minimize the risk of hard-hitting news.
Right. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, where do you want to start?
I suppose we can start with about 7 seconds discussion of the agenda suite. So
okay.
This is now after AstroScript became one per deck, the NBN agenda suite. Some sync decks run Quantum Predictive Model, but otherwise this is the agenda suite that all NBN decks run, and it's horrible. Global Food Initiative should go on the most wanted list, and breaking news should probably be banned.
Oh, where's your sense of adventure? I love breaking news. I've always loved the threat that breaking news creates, because rarely is... Okay, it's going to always be impactful, but rarely is a skilled player's game ruined by a breaking news score. It's like a scrub killer.
I mean, it is and it isn't. So the combination with... Certainly that is true to a degree, but the combination of Global Food Initiative and exchange of information means that a single break. I mean, you can't stop MBN ever scoring a breaking news unless you're completely dominating the game. And being able to switch 1 point for 3 effectively is just huge. Absolutely huge. And
that's why
and
you
that
play
is something
Kim.
that can just... Well, interestingly, a friend is now playing Kim and doing pretty good work against MBN.
Yeah, there's 14 operations in this deck.
Yeah. Well, I think he's been playing against another friend of ours who I think may have even more operations in the deck, and I believe ate something like 20 of them in one game.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of my friends and also Dean from Toronto, he played a Val deck at, I forget which major tournament, I'd have to look it up, but he played just Val with Rebirth, and he's like, the number of times I rebirthed into Kim in this tournament was ridiculous.
Yeah, was that Canadian Nationals?
I think it might have been Canadian Nationals, yeah. But he's just like the Kim against all these NBN decks, once the assets are in the bin, switching to Kim and just being like, okay, so now we're going to get rid of all of this tag support that you have, because then I can just float tags.
Yeah. Because that's the horrible thing when you see an exchange of information coming, like say if you've got like an R&D lock on, it's effectively an agenda for them and not an agenda for you. So you need to dig past it, but as soon as they draw it, the game could be over.
Right. So we've got the standard, like you said, it's pretty self-explanatory. It does a lot of good work. Beal continues to be great. And especially in the meta that we exist now, Beal is to a degree sometimes better than the single Astro scripts. Like sometimes I find myself more excited to see the Beal.
So I think, 3/2s are good anyway because we've got Astro script and we've got Sansan and you can never advance. But I think Beals were possibly a little bit higher value when there was more Tag Me Anarch going around, because those decks could keep on top of you to a degree, but if you ever manage to sneak up a decent number of credits, then Psychographics just ends the game right there.
Right.
Which isn't like a nice out to have. It's not sort of a primary strategy, but in decks that go all in on that, and that can be quite difficult to deal with because so much of your ice is turned blank because all it does is give them tags, and your tag punishment in other respects is less relevant because they're designed to go tag me anyway.
Because they don't care.
But then Psychographics, as long as you can get your credits up, does not give a fuck. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on the show?
Yeah, I swear
Cool.
all the time on the show.
Fantastic, I couldn't remember.
So let's go down to the assets. So
Sure.
perhaps the more standard is the commercial bankers group,
Yeah.
but in its place you have a single Adonis campaign. So talk a little bit about the inclusion of Adonis over commercial bankers group.
Okay. So the reason that I'm experimenting with dropping commercial bankers, and I have been playing them in most of the versions of this deck that I've played, is because of Temujin contracts, which is absolutely everywhere and can completely undo the good work you've done taxing the runner out with trashing things, dragging through toll booths to deal with Sansans, in a single turn. Criminal, if they can drop it to Temujin, goes up 15 credits that turn and then has 8 credits sitting on it in order to bounce back from a closed accounts or just up their money more. So I came to experiment with Adonis because very smart people over here started swapping their pad campaigns for launch campaigns, because you could pop them in your scoring remote and then they'd be gone, and then you could chuck your Sansans or agendas in. And I found that very, very effective at BABW last weekend. So I thought, well, what if I have even fewer open remotes? What would I do with the banker's influence? I felt like you still needed economy, so Adonis seemed like a good fit there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good card. It's
Yeah.
just solid. We got Jackson's for the same reason every deck has Jackson Howard.
Yep.
We got 3 launch campaigns, which you already discussed, which
Yep.
I've always liked this card. I like it a lot more in Spark. Spark's actually my pet project, but that's another video.
Interesting.
And Sensi's Actors Union, because this card is great.
Yeah, so I suppose I can say a little bit more on those two choices briefly. So launch campaign is also good because it stops you necessarily having open remote the way pad campaign tends to necessitate. But it also gives you a 1 credit boost on the turn you res it rather than a 1 credit loss. So if you drag someone through a piece of ice to a launch campaign when they think it's an agenda, then you either they trash it and that is a huge economic swing in your favor, or they don't and they've paid for the ice or taken the consequences of the ice, and you gain a credit when you res your launch campaign, which aids with hard-hitting news traces. Now, I should probably mention another chap who has been sort of experimenting with trying to keep the number of open remotes down is Eric Twice, who I believe won a Spanish tournament with his version of CTM, which runs Adonis's and Daily Business Show rather than Sensi's. Right. I've not gone that far, mostly due to cowardice and laziness, but his deck's very good. I feel like Sensi's you can stand having as an open remote, because having them fire while a criminal collects, or well, not just a criminal, everyone's running Temujin, while a runner runs Temujin can be higher impact, so it can give you the breaking news to fire off your sand to kill their money that they just spent 2 turns accumulating, whereas Commercial Bankers is getting you 3 credits a turn, which is great, but if it's letting the runner gain 12 or 15 credits and then 8 or 10 credits the next turn, that's not such a good exchange.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. So we've got 2 sands. It's really good. Like super duper good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go down to Ops, because Ops really kind of does form somewhat the core of the strategy with controlling the message. We've got Archive Memories. It's a good card, I feel.
Yeah, so this is the replacement for the second Bankers. Pretty much all of the other, in fact, I think every single one of the other events is pretty much standard in most CTM lists, and is certainly exactly the same, except missing a targeted marketing from the Noah McKee version. Archive Memories is an amazing card. It's particularly amazing with tag punishment, allowing you to, say, hard-hitting use someone, and then when a criminal picks up security testing and clears 3 of the tags, you just hard-hitting use them again, or close accounts them again, whatever piece of tag punishment you want to reuse, or, as can sometimes happen with Sensi's firing, you have to ditch a piece of tag punishment which doesn't seem very relevant, and then sort of 15 turns down the line becomes very relevant. You just pick it right back up.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, I just want to chime in. One of the biggest problems that up until this meta that tag decks have always had is you couldn't hold the tag punishment cards in your hand. They just bloated up your hand while you were waiting for the opportunity. So Archive just is a very intuitive choice for me, because it gives you the ability. And it's not like there's a lot of secrecy here. People know that you're running psychographics. People know that you're running closed accounts. So when they see it in there, you're like, okay, by the way, if you ever let me tag you, I'm going to go get this for 0 credits and close your shit. Yep.
I mean, I've not managed to do it yet, but I dream of the day where I get 2 exchanges of information off in one turn. Which I think would be tricky to pull off, but would be incredibly hilarious and probably cause your opponent to just walk away from the table.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. All right. So we've got the closed accounts, which we've already discussed. It's 2 of them. Very standard for this build.
Yep. It gets you out of so many sort of dodgy starts. If the runner has a good time moneying up and keeping on top of your econ assets, just a single breaking news score followed by closed accounts can completely reverse the course of the early game in your favor, which is just amazing.
Right. I mean, and it's worth noting, especially in this build where you're trying to limit the number of open remotes that you have, if the runner has been destroying your open remotes so you don't have anything left that doesn't have ice on it, criminal, I'm in an HB heavy meta in Northern Delaware, and Andy is harder to play against my friend than it is against people from far away, because there's no open servers for me to run.
Yeah.
So going to 0 credits when you're Andy, even with Temujins and whatever else on the table, is oppressive, because you have to click for 4 credits to do your money run the next turn.
Yeah. It's funny, people have been not up in arms, but very vocal about how powerful Temujin is. I actually think it's deceptively well balanced. In a meta where people are icing up all their servers, even to just a moderate degree, the return on Temujin
is pretty bad.
It's still good, but it then starts to compare less favorably with liberated accounts, which is always the thing people point to as Temujin being like an example of power creep.
Right. I'll give an example. Hey, I don't think it's power creep at all. People just need to play differently. In a tournament, I went undefeated. No, I'm sorry. I lost one game with that Andy deck. And then people just were like, okay, I guess we're all on purple then. Yep. And then everybody just went to purple. And it would just be in the mid to late game. I would plot out. I'm like, okay, I've got 7 turns left where I can make runs.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
And then eventually, if I don't win, I just run out of steam.
Yep.
Because I'm Andy and I put all my eggs in this basket of compiling a huge amount of money and using it to like completely dominate R&D and HQ. But if I can't do that, if every run is just, you know, a 1 credit lost or barely breaking even, I can't set up that domination. So it's a balanced card. People just, again, are resistant to changing what they're playing to fight what other people are playing.
Yeah, and I think it's actually a really, like, it's a really nice sort of organic answer to the asset spam decks that we've seen being really, really powerful for the last 6 months or possibly longer. Rather than, you know, a specific asset hate card, although some of them are good as well. Just saying, well, if you do leave your remotes open, the runner gets this advantage.
Right. Because then you can still get the advantage if they don't trash it, right? If they leave the Sensi open so that they can keep running it, you're still going to get the benefit of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got Exchange of Information, which we already discussed. Fantastic card. I love this card so much, even though a lot of people hate it.
I like it when I'm playing it, less so when my opponent does.
Yeah, I mean, my Controlling the Message deck is called the Fun Police, because that's exactly what it is.
I feel like that's a name that gets sort of handed down from one brutal deck to the next in each sort of meta generation.
Yeah, because it is the Fun Police. I'm having fun when you're having literally no fun. I mean,
I would say, like...
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but like, this deck is, like, these types of decks are mean and they're hard to play against. But, like, they're not oppressive. Like, if you know how to pilot the matchup, you can win with skilled play.
That's actually... It's funny. That's exactly what I was going to say. I feel less guilty about playing this deck than I would sort of the museum grindy decks that were big for a while. Because whilst it can be incredibly unfair if your opponent isn't set up to take on CTM, or if you just get a bonkers start and they don't, the games tend to be quite dynamic. So there's always stuff happening. It's not just, oh god, I've lost in 15 turns. Will I play out these 15 turns? I guess so. Sort of thing.
Only a jerk would make, like, IG decks and NBN decks with Museum, and only a jerk
Who would do
that.
such a thing?
Who would do such a terrible thing? Yeah, no, we have hard-hitting news, which is honestly, I'm calling it. It is my... No, I can't say that because Smoke's not out yet. Smoke will be my favorite card.
Yeah!
But up until this point, hard-hitting news is my favorite Corp card. It's so good. It encapsulates the theme of the cycle so well. And it just does what NBN needed in a way that's not super overpowered.
Yeah, it is a really interesting card, and I like where it sits between mid-seasons and C-Source as well. I think it's a really nice example of the creativity and boldness of the card design team, led, of course, by Damon. It's a very powerful card. It's a meta-defining card, and I think both of those things are good. It's a shame that those cards keep going to MBN, but outside of that faction issue, I think Hard Hitting News is great.
Do we need to put on our Wayland tinfoil hats?
No, we'll keep it out of this video.
But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think what this card punishes more than anything, now that it's out, now that it's been out for a while and people know about it, is it punishes you not being prepared, right? Or not being aware, right? The only time now, unless, like you said, I'm really far behind, right? The only time this card has really punished me is when I stopped paying attention. Yeah. And I ended a turn with 6 credits, right?
Yeah.
When I had already seen this card, or I knew that they had enough money to pay for it. And then I'm being punished for not being attentive.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't situations that you set up with it. You know, either an Agenda or a Sansan in a relatively expensive break remote, and they either hit that or they don't, and then you score breaking news and tag punish them anyway. But that setting up that sort of dichotomy takes preparation, takes board state, it takes lack of resources on your opponent's part, and that is Netrunner.
Right.
Be it either taxing remotes in Caprice or the kill option when that was more viable.
Right,
and this is the same.
Yeah, and this, like you said, it kind of fits in between C-Source and mid-seasons, like you said. But I'd go so far to say that, like, because of a lot of the way the runner economy and a lot of the things that we had going on, C-Source wasn't a real threat anymore, right?
No.
So this feels that same thing where it's just like, are you ready to run? You better be sure that you are, because if you're not right about whether or not you're ready to run, I'm going to punish the shit out of you, And it's great because it's not an instant got you. You can make a mistake, and then the corp is not killing you on that same turn. You have a turn to recover.
It's actually even... I agree with all of that, but it's just listening to you say that's made me think about it some more. And I think possibly another reason why it's, in a design sense, more interesting than either C-Source or mid-seasons is that it's not sort of as static a threat as they are. So, like, mid-seasons, generally, if Corp's intending to mid-seasons you, it'll just be a big money race, and either your economy can beat the Corp's or it can't. C-Source is a big money race till you find your Plascrete. But this is a much more dynamic threat, so you can't just money race as the Corp and say, well, I've got 40 credits, you've got 20 credits, here comes the hard-hitting news, and they're like, cool, clear 4 tags.
Right.
You spent all your money, I mean, of course, if you put a breaking news down as well, but then if someone's running Juices Wild, that's you absolutely screwed yourself. So it's more dynamic, it's more interactive, I think, is the simple words that I was looking for in all those.
Yeah, I mean, and when I was playing a Leela deck for a little while, I had like a single copy of Paper Tripping, and yeah, exactly like you described, a corp. I had it as an emergency shutoff valve since I was going tag me, and I hadn't gone tag me to that point, but the guy vamped himself.
Oh yeah,
to land the hard hitting news, and then I was just like, clear it. You know what I'm saying? Like.
I mean, that is just such an indication of how much the meta has moved, largely due to this card. I had someone paper tripping me twice in one game.
Yeah, it's awful. or just the fact that you're seeing certain cards that just, like, if you told me a year ago that they'd be getting like actual play, like networking, networking is seeing play, or just so many interesting things are coming up because that's what a game should do. It should make medium cards or subpar cards relevant. We got hedge funds. Hedge funds is good. We got psychographics. Psychographics is great. This is some bread and butter Netrunner here.
Yep.
We got Sweeps Week. It's really good with Andy running around again. I forgot how
sure
good
is.
He is. And then we got All Seeing Eye, another amazing card.
Yep.
I just love this card. It's when it matters, it really matters.
Yep. I mean, obviously it's good for the reasons that everyone knows it's good. Bizarrely, in the final of the tournament last weekend, I ended up playing against Pitchfork Haley, just because one of the guys in our meta hasn't played much Netrunner in 6 months, so just sort of came along with the decks he'd been playing, updated for the most wanted list changes. And he is a good enough player that he made it to the finals with Pitchfork Haley, and he was just in a constant state of fear about All Seeing Eye, and then I landed it, and it must have been between 10 and 12 resources just gone in the blink of an eye. And he sort of looked at me and said, "Oh, I thought you'd close my accounts." And I was like, "No, I'm doing that next turn."
Next turn. Yeah, it's rough. That's why Haley went away, which makes me sad because I loved her, and just the NBN breaking news, All Seeing Eye threat, and the things you have to pack to deal with it, destroyed her efficiency.
Yep, absolutely.
So this ice suite looks not unsurprising. We got resistors. Seems good, especially if people decide to say fuck it and just pile tags on.
Yeah,
it's real bad for them real fast. We got to wrap around.
So the resistors are actually obviously good for that reason, but just being able to res something for 0 when the runner fulfills their criteria for being hit by a hard-hitting news is really good. And generally it'll end the run. Obviously, if someone installs 3 rabbit holes out of Cape, then they're a bit rubbish. But other than that, quality piece of ice.
Yeah, pro tip, also true in green. If you're trying to tag the runner, 0 cost ice, pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I love vanilla, but that's another discussion. It feels so good. It's like, could you install paperclip for 4 to be able to break this, please? So we got Archangel. Archangel's really good. Again, if they actually manage to break it, you're creating very big econ gaps for them.
Yeah, so this is a change to the ice suite, and I'm sure I wasn't the first to make it. But it was put in, one, because Archangel's great, but more specifically because it is a nightmare for criminals. Generally, criminals are running Gordian Blade, which costs the same to break as paying the trace does.
Right.
Which is just a nightmare. And obviously, so in the 1 in 100 games where their first turn is install Temujin on R&D, run R&D, and they hit an Archangel, that is pretty hilarious.
It feels pretty good.
Yeah.
No, it feels good. So we've got Enigma. Don't really need to belabor that. It'll always be with us.
Thank God. Gotta love an Enigma.
Gotta love it. We got Little Engine. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
So that was sort of like I believe that was in the original build, and Little Engine's always been something that I've understood the need for but never loved. It was huge at the weekend, with criminals wanting to drop a Temujin and run. Anything in front of a Little Engine just makes the upfront credit cost, as opposed to sort of the net credit cost of getting through a Little Engine, really, really annoying to deal with.
People often forget with cards like Little Engine, where they're like, well, but if they get through, it's like, well, right. But now you're saying, in order to land an account siphon, yeah, you're going to get 15 at the end of it, but now the cost of entry is 9 credits.
Yeah. And that'll buy you a couple of turns, and, if you can't deal with an account siphon threat in a couple of turns, then you're probably losing that game anyway.
Right. Pop-up window seems good.
Yeah, so that was popped in just to up the ice count and shore up the economy a bit, since we lost the commercial bankers. Pop-up window is a good card, and being able to ice up all servers is something we're looking to do eventually, so that popped in.
Yep. We got 2 toll booths. Toll booths is great.
Yep. So these are your pretty much R&D and remote cards for when you're past the sort of everything flying all over the place stage of the game and need to hunker down and play is this the Sansan, is this the agenda game, and also stop them just going all out on medium if they've decided to go tag me. Right.
We got Data Raven. Seems good.
Yep. I believe the original list was running a couple more Data Ravens, and I believe I have no idea what Nomaki's doing, but he's a very smart deck builder, so I'm sure he's made either similar or better changes. But bringing in the Turnpikes over Data Ravens was an idea I stole, I believe, from Chris Dyer, but if it was from someone else, then you're also awesome. Well done. Turnpike's amazing for setting up hard-hitting uses, because you res Data Raven and 9 times out of 10 the runner just bounces off, whereas Turnpike, they lose a credit and take a tag, which is fantastic.
Pretty good. Yep. So this is the deck. We're going to take it for a spin on competitive Jinteki, and we're going to see how we do. Seamus, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Everybody watching at home, until we see you again, always be running.